Welcome to Come to Know Yourself. Today, I want to have a conversation about Genesis. And it's often thought that Genesis is the creation story of the beginning of Earth and the universe. And a lot of people seem to think that that would be impossible to create the universe and Earth in 7 days. And that is because Genesis is not talking about the creation of the physical universe or the physical earth. It's talking about the creation and birth of you, me, consciousness, awareness, the birth of the self, the I am, and the mind, and everything that is within the mind. And so it's very misunderstood that the Bible has literal interpretations and some spiritual interpretations or parables. But the Bible is literally, the entire Bible is spiritual interpretations, hidden context between the lines, below the surface of the literal, in the spiritual. And all the scriptures of the Bible are trying to teach us and help us understand what's going on inside our minds and our spirit and our soul and the secrets of consciousness and awareness. And it's also a record of our evolution as spiritual beings. Genesis being the beginning of our spiritual creation, and the end, Revelations, being the final evolution of our spiritual creation, which is full transcendence from the human existence into enlightenment. Even the Adam and Eve story in Genesis is not talking about earth physically or physical beings. They're all representations, metaphysical expressions of higher spiritual things. And so I wanted to talk about Genesis for a little bit. And the first thing to understand is, before the universe came into existence, and that is the key word, came into existence. The universe needed something to come into existence. And so before the universe, there was just existence itself, which was infinity and an endless sea of energy. And that energy is comprised of frequencies of vibration and light. The physical universe has form, has atoms, things made from energy that emit light in specific ways to experience this physical universe. But before the universe began, there was just existence and infinite potentiality of all possibilities within every single point of reference, of every possible conceivable reference point of all of infinity in all directions. And within every single point exists time, space, in all dimensions, waiting to manifest. But in order for even the universe or the human body or anything to come into existence and manifest from infinity of infinite potentiality of energy and light, there needs to be a force, something to bring things together, to form things, to unite, connect in balance, harmony, to sustain form, equally balanced and consistent and reliable, so that the form stays in that form. Just like the solar system has sustained its form for millions, billions of years, however long, because of a specific force that all of the particles of physics interact with. And that force was the first manifestation of infinity before the physical universe came into existence. And that force is known as relation. Nothing can come together, bind, connect, unite, balance itself, and sustain form without this force called relation, where everything's relating to each other and coming together and creating and manifesting something. And this force of relation has two other aspects to it, or forms. When something is relating to itself and its environment, it is in the process of what's known as awareness. And when something's in the process of awareness, it's relating to its environment and itself. And relation, this force, is all encompassing. It goes across all of existence. It's not in the brain. It's not part of the body. Awareness is the force of all things. And this awareness, this force called relation, has many attributes. And when you look at all the attributes of relation, what you see is the attributes of love, relationship between things. So if you look at the attributes of relation, equality, unity, connection, reliability, consistency, and then even further into that, in the nuances of love, kindness, forgiveness, compassion, gentleness, non-judgment, empathy, freedom, peace, joy, happiness, sincerity. All of these nuances of love, without them having balance and consistency and reliability and equality, all things love, not even love could exist. So all three of those things are the force: love, relation, and awareness. And the awareness, which is the first form or force or influence to come into existence, is known as the I am. And the reason before this force came into existence, all of infinity, every reference point of every point of time and space and dimension, was at rest. There was nothing that had been manifested. All energy was in a state of vibration, kind of like the buzzing of a beehive. And light, the frequencies of the energy within infinity had not been raised into any form that would give off light into a higher frequency. And so this force of relation is what brought a disturbance throughout all of infinity, all of existence, to bring about the rest of reality. And the expression of this awareness, when it creates form and unites and connects and brings relationship to that energy within existence, that's called consciousness. That is the light. And the physical universe is literally an expression of consciousness. And everything that we see within the universe is an expression of consciousness. So, in essence, this awareness, this consciousness, this I am, this first force to come into existence before the universe was created, it's what we know and call God. But this force is not all-encompassing and exclusive to God. All of us have consciousness and awareness. And we're not just a little tiny piece of consciousness and awareness, and God's all the rest, like he's up here and we're down here. Conscious awareness is all-encompassing. It's everything. All there is consciousness and awareness, and the expressions of consciousness. So we are exact copies of this force called God. We just exist in other dimensions, because existence isn't one plane of existence. It is multidimensional planes, copies of this existence infinitely. And each one of us is that copy. The physical universe is an expression, a metaphysical expression, utilizing consciousness, the light, and the energy called the force or awareness, to manifest a metaphysical model of the mind. The universe is a metaphysical model of the mind, and the solar system we live on is a metaphysical model of our being, our celestial body, our spirit, called the I am, the self. And the celestial body model represents our being, and our being is comprised of 7 primary vortices of energy, like planets, of the primary colors or the primary dimensions of light. And then the sun represents the singularity of all those dimensions of color coming together into opening a dimension into the dimension of light, just pure light. And it is within that pure light that the self, the consciousness of infinity exists, that we call God. And then we are also a copy of that. But at the beginning of existence, when infinity became aware and conscious, and it became the force to manifest all things, this infinite awareness, consciousness, all-encompassing across all of infinity, because infinity is the body of consciousness and awareness, the being, the states of being. Everything is a state of being in energy and light. But at the time that this force came into existence, there was a single unity to all dimensions, because they all awoke at the same time into one single plane. And it's kind of like if one dimension is, a portal, and all the other dimensions of conscious awareness are infinite, then it's like looking through infinite eyes of consciousness and awareness. And at that time, that force was every dimension, every plane of existence infinitely, as if looking through every single dimension of consciousness at the same time. And so infinity knew that it was the only thing to exist, because infinity is all-encompassing. And so infinity, or God, made the choice to separate itself from all the other dimensions of consciousness, to have company, to fulfill relationship, and to fulfill all things of love, to relate to another force or entity that is the same, to end loneliness. And so the Genesis is the story of the birth or the separation of the dimensions of consciousness from God, the first being to awaken, into awakening each of us in our dimensions of infinity to become the conscious, aware, I am force of all existence. And so Genesis is a story of the birth of our spiritual being. And when God awoke our dimension and separated it from himself, he brought that dimension into the single plane of existence. Existence is like the neutral space of infinity, where all things come into existence. If they're not brought into existence, then they exist in their own dimension outside of existence, and it's as if they don't exist. So when God brought each one of us into existence, we came through the dimension of darkness from the dimension of light. And he used those 7 primary vortices of energy to create enough energy to pierce a portal into that dimension of light, to bring us through. And that singularity and those 7 vortices of primary colors create a massive field of energy around them. And that field of energy is known as the mind. The mind's not in the brain. It is our field of energy around our being. And in the Bible, they reference this field of energy called the mind, called the kingdom. The kingdom is a metaphor for the mind. And heaven is a metaphor for a state of consciousness, which is our original state of consciousness when we came into being, which is the highest state of consciousness. When Genesis says, in the beginning, the earth was without form and void, the earth represents the subconscious. So when we were first created, our subconscious was empty. It had no form because it had not taken on any forms. It hadn't stored any information. So it was like an empty container. The subconscious was void of any information, any memories, because we had not started our spiritual journey yet. And I will have a video about the complete interpretation of Genesis. But what I just wanted to share with you that Genesis is not about the creation of the physical universe or Adam and Eve. When Genesis talks about the darkness and dividing the light from the darkness represents all of existence. And when he brought our dimension into the existence, that light pierced in from our dimension into the dimension of darkness. And our light divided the darkness, because it's like turning on a flashlight in a dark room. It goes from all-encompassing darkness to illumination. And so that divides the light from the darkness, because now there's two forces in the same space. And so what it's talking about is that light is consciousness. He brought us into consciousness through opening up that portal from our dimension of light into the dimension of darkness, which is the neutral plane of all of existence. I've got Genesis here, and we can go over a couple of the verses. It says, in the beginning, oops, I'm in the wrong spot. Here we go. Did I lose my spot? No, here we go. In the beginning, God created heaven and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So, in the beginning of our birth, where he opened up the dimensions of consciousness, he created heaven, which is consciousness, the conscious field of experience, a high state of consciousness, and earth, the subconscious. So he created consciousness and subconsciousness. And the earth, which is subconscious, was without form and void. It had no memories, nothing, no form had been made to store there. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. Darkness, the deep means an infinite depth of reality. And so on the face of your spiritual being, consciousness, was the face of the deep, which is the endless darkness of all possibilities. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. The waters represent the energy in the mind. The mind's energy is likened to waters, because energy flows. It's like a vast sea of energy. And the Spirit of God is that force, relation, awareness, love. And so our being is a copy of God, just like in Psalms 82:6, where it says, "You are children of the Most High, but you shall die like men and fall like one of the princes." That's a metaphor that I have in another video that you can look into. But our spirit God's Spirit moved across the face of the waters because he gave us an awakening. We are a copy of that force. And so our being was touching the face of the waters. The mind and the energy and our being literally are seamless. Energy is everywhere. Everything is energy. So you can divide them kind of like you have an ice cube and you have the ocean, but they're still made of the same thing. So you could think of awareness, the Spirit of God, our being, the force, as the ice cube, like a perfect sphere, a singularity. And all around us, it's like we're submerged in the sea of energy all around us. And that sea of energy is condensed around us like a field of energy, because our being produces like a magnetic force, pulls in the infinite sea of energy, which is the face of the deep, and condenses some of it into a field around us. So then, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. So he's saying, let there be light of consciousness, and then there was consciousness. We awoke. We were born. And God God saw our light, our consciousness, and that it was good, that we were like him in his likeness. Good has the 2 zeros, which means infinity. And so we were of infinity. We were an exact copy of God. And then God divided the light from the darkness. So when we were birthed into consciousness, our very being divided that light, divided that darkness, just like a flashlight in a dark room. Then we go, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. So day and night seasons represent durations of time and a measurement of the moment, the future, the past, the present. And so day is when we are awake, the awakening of consciousness. And darkness is night, when there is no consciousness. It's that part of our being, because we are infinity, we are everything, is asleep. We have not expressed consciousness from the rest of the energy of infinity to bring something into awakening. When we manifest things, we are awakening a part of ourselves, a part of consciousness, an expression. So, and then on the second day, God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters to let it divide the waters from the waters." So a firmament is like a condensed form of energy, like a field that within a field. And he divided the waters, which is the energy within the mind, from other aspects of the energy in the mind. And the waters were above the firmament, and it was so. So the waters that he's talking about that are above the firmament is the high state of consciousness, the conscious field. And the waters below the firmament is the subconscious. So that way we have an area we can store memories and thoughts and bring things into it from the face of the deep, the darkness, into the higher parts of the waters of the energy of the mind, into manifesting consciousness of something to experience, to awaken something from within us. And God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. So that firmament up here is the heavenly state of consciousness, the high state of consciousness. Whereas below is the subconscious. Just as it says, as above, so below. Both have the energy of infinity, but one is in the state of consciousness, the heaven, and the other one is in the below state of conscious, the subconscious. And God said, "Let the waters under the heaven, be gathered together in one place, and let dry land appear." So here he's referencing under the heaven. So below the firmament, under heaven, under consciousness is subconsciousness. And he's saying, let the waters gather in one place. Let the energy gather into one place where we can form memories and store information. Because if we don't have some place to store memories, then we don't know one moment for the next. We're not even really aware, because awareness and consciousness exist based on a state of being or a frequency of energy previously compared through relating, through that force of relation, through awareness, to the next state of being. Kind of like a film strip, over and over again, infinitely forward, going back and then forward, back and forward. The previous frame of reference of mind gives us a reference of the next frame. And the dry land represents the subconscious. Earth is a metaphor for the subconscious, a place where things are stored, kind of like ice cubes. Energy is solid, so it's representing dry land. Also, because it has not been illuminated into the higher state of consciousness, it is in a state of, like dirt. It isn't shiny like light is. So that's what kind of references dry versus wet, because water represents energy flowing, and the energy within the subconscious is solidified and gathered together to form things out of it, kind of like molding clay. And so the next verse, and then he gathered together of the waters, called the seas, and God saw that it was good. The sea represents all of the mind, the infinite ocean of energy. Kind of like, emotions. We have a whole ocean of emotions. That's where emotions are stored or created, waves of energy that consciousness conjures up within that sea of energy. And God said, let the earth bring forth grass, the herb yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind, whose seed is in itself upon the earth. And it was so. So this is where I'm going to stop. But when we start talking about the things of the earth, it's all metaphors. Trees are a reference of trees of knowledge, and leaves are a reference of pages of that tree of knowledge. Fruit is a reference of the result of that knowledge. Like, fruit would be wisdom and our actions based on the understanding of that wisdom. And a seed represents an idea. I place a seed in your mind about how things are different than what is interpreted with Genesis. That idea starts to grow new thoughts, and those roots if it takes roots in your own beliefs, then it produces a tree, which then produces fruit, which is your own understanding, your own beliefs. And so the fruit that the Garden of Eden is talking about is not a physical fruit. Adam is a metaphor for first man, the birth of us. Each one of us has a generic name. The name of the spirit in general is Adam. Just like in the physical universe, Adam spelled with a T is a single part of the universe. Our being is a single part of all of infinity, all of existence. So we are the atom of the spiritual universe. But we're not part of the physical universe. It is a metaphysical model of what we really are. Our mind would look kind of like the physical universe, our whole inner spiritual world, with the Bible references as the kingdom. But we are not part of the physical universe. It's a model that we experience through connecting our consciousness to a physical body for a brief time to go on a spiritual journey of evolution. And I'll have more videos about why we're here and how this all works and how we're connected to the body. But right now, I wanted to finish with talking about Adam and Eve's story. And so Adam represents first man, and the spiritual being is referenced as male, not like gender, because spiritual beings have no gender. But male represents the instigator of life, the seed of creation. Awareness, the force, the I am, is the seed of creation. Without the I am, the force of relation, there's nothing that can come created or manifest from reality. The mind is considered female. The mind is known as Eve, because the mind is where all ideas and seeds are nurtured, and nurturing is contemplation, understanding. And so through that nurturing, the mind is considered feminine. It has all the creation aspects of the feminine, the subtleties, the gentleness, the kindness, just all the feminine aspects of creation. Whereas the male aspects of creation is what instigates, kind of more forceful into instigating things to manifest. And so in the beginning, Eden, the Garden of Eden, is a metaphor for a place that God made as a place of knowledge. And so each spiritual being experiences reality through telepathy. So God created the Garden of Eden within his mind. And then we connected our consciousness at the time of our birth to God's consciousness, which then brought the Garden of Eden into our mind, and it was like we're in the same place. We can't actually be in the same space as someone else. Each mind, each kingdom or dimension of awareness of the force is a dimension of its own. No one can join us in our minds. But it feels like we're in the same space, kind of like in a video game where people are gaming online on a network and they feel like they're playing the same game in the same space. So at the time of our birth, we exist at the same conscious frequency as God, the heaven. And so our minds are on the same plane of existence, and we're linked into a network of spiritual beings or dimensions of consciousness and awareness. And so in this Garden of Eden, there's all kinds of trees of fruit, all kinds of trees of knowledge, which produce fruit when a spiritual being consumes that knowledge, learns of it, digests it through contemplation, learns of it, understands it, and then creates its own fruit of understanding from that knowledge. And so the beginning of our journey is, in order for God to give us free will, he must tell us all about the knowledge. And so in the Garden of Eden, the knowledge of dark and the knowledge of light, the knowledge of death and the knowledge of life, the knowledge of consciousness, the knowledge of unconsciousness, which is death. And so he must warn us and say, here is the dark and the light, the trees of knowledge of good and evil. Evil is a word backwards for live. Good is a metaphor for infinity, the infinites, the absolutes of consciousness and awareness. What creates life, which creates consciousness. Whereas evil, the darkness, takes away consciousness and brings you into the darkness. So it's the opposite of living, it's evil. And so the fall is, the serpent is not a snake or a devil being that's going to, one day judge us and burn us in hell. That's another video about those are all metaphors. Hell is not a place, neither is the devil one single person. Anybody can be the devil. It's a metaphor for the evil heart, and hell is a metaphor for a state of consciousness, of suffering. But back to the snake represents temptation. Temptation has a way of slithering into our minds, and our reasoning, when it's doesn't have pure wisdom, that our wisdom is kind of an ignorant wisdom. We talk ourselves into all kinds of crazy things. How many things have we gotten ourselves into by talking ourselves into temptations that have harmed us or put us down the wrong path? And so the serpent represents temptation. And so when God said, hey, there's 2 trees of knowledge here in the Garden of Eden, and I recommend, if you want to stay in this plane of existence, in this high state of consciousness, only consume this knowledge, and you will bear the fruits of high consciousness. And we will continue to be on the same plane of existence, which is heaven. But if you consume the knowledge of the darkness, of death, of evil, then you shall fall from this state of consciousness. And that's the fall, because now once we consume that knowledge and learn of the good and evil and become like God, knowing both, then we now need the wisdom to learn to sustain that high level of consciousness without, autopilot. When we're first born, because we only have the knowledge of good, it's as if our consciousness and awareness, our mind, is on autopilot. Everything's taken care of for us. And so when we learn of that knowledge of evil through our temptation to know, you got to know, right? Just can't not know something. What's in the box? What is it? What's behind door number 1, door number 2? Then we fall from that state of consciousness. And now our journey here on earth is to learn to come back to that state of consciousness. And the whole idea is to learn to stay within that high state of consciousness. And it requires learning to be in absolute control of our emotions, our thoughts, our feelings, our heart, our desires, because those are all the things that allow us to move through the frequencies of consciousness. And so the human existence is a stable point, a starting point for working your way up the ladder into high consciousness, which is called the kingdom of heaven or enlightenment. And those are other videos that we'll talk about why we're here and what our evolution, our journey here has to do with it. But basically, we're here to come to know ourselves again as spiritual beings. And when you are infinity, how can you know yourself if you are everything? Unless you pretend to be something you're not and forget who you are so that you can gain insight, perspective. And so this human journey is part of that, gaining insight, perspective, so that when we come out of this, we can reflect on a life that we aren't to see the life that we truly are. And there's many other aspects to this journey besides that. And we'll talk more about that in another video. This one's about Genesis and the beginning of creation. God made the physical universe as a spiritual school, an exact copy of our mind, our dimension, our spiritual dimension. And our solar system is an exact copy of our being. And everything on earth, in our nature, out in nature, is to teach us about our nature. Everything in nature is a metaphysical expression of consciousness, trying to reflect back to us different aspects of ourselves. You know, the animals within Earth are teaching us about different personality types. You know, someone can be overbearing, someone can be, peaceful as a dove, someone can be timid like a deer, someone can be forceful and predatorial like a wolf. All the living things on this planet are living metaphors of different beast personalities of what we can express in consciousness. But they're not the final expression. The final expression is to come back and become the I am. And all the vegetation and plants and trees within the earth are expressions of consciousness. Seeds represent ideas, trees represent knowledge, plants and herbs represent medicine. Certain types of knowledge will heal our ignorance, our suffering, to give us understanding. Birds are representations of thoughts as they kind of fly around in our minds, and some of them are judgmental, some of them are to help us. Some of them are like watchers. Birds are always watching, right? Compulsive thinking. And there's so many metaphors within the earth and nature, because it's all the nature of consciousness and awareness. And we'll talk more about that. This one is just about Genesis is not the beginning of the universe, physical, or the beginning of our solar system and Earth. It is the birth of our spiritual universe, the creation of our awareness, the force of relation, the creation of consciousness as we were awoken into our beginning of our spiritual journey. It is the documentation of, our first journey. The Adam represents first man that we become as we journey through becoming another I am. Every I am is another man. I am eating, that's a man. I am sleeping, I am suffering, I am, our personalities change all the time, and every one of them is another version of us, infinitely. And then Eve is our mind. Eve's kind of like Alexa. Our mind is like, Eve, tell me what I need to know. And Eve tells you what you need to know through, realization, thoughts, understanding, your conscience. Let your conscience be your guide. Let your higher self be your guide. It's that we're not in tune to that voice and we don't pay attention to it and have a relationship with the voice of Eve, that we don't really have that access until we awaken and really turn our attention away from the human experience. And there's other voices within the mind that we're aware of, like the one that's the suffering, the ego. The ego is the voice of suffering, the negative polarity. And then we have the voice of the higher self, the conscience, where God speaks directly to our hearts. And then you have your voice of your inner dialogue as you speak your own inner journal where you're speaking to yourself. So learning to identify every voice and its presence, feel its presence, and see the difference between each one so you know which one is actually you. And that's another video for another time. For now, let go and consider that Genesis is the birth of your being. It's the record of your own birth. Before you were born as a human being on earth, this Genesis story is the birth of your consciousness, your awareness, your spiritual being, your dimension of mind, and how you came into existence as a dimension of conscious awareness. And within that space of existence of all infinity, the physical universe, although it's very, very large, light years large, it is not infinite. And it has its own existence when it came into existence, just like each of us. Only each of us in our dimensions of mind, our kingdoms, they all exist outside the universe in the unformed sea of energy of existence as doorways into the dimension of light on the other side of the dimension of darkness where existence resides. So for now, that is the mysteries of Genesis. Just as Jesus says, for you, I share my mysteries, and for those who are not worthy, I do not share my mysteries. For them I give parables, because they see, but they do not see, and they hear, but they do not hear. In other words, they see the words in the scriptures, they hear my voice, but they only see the surface meanings. They don't have spiritual sight, and they're not ready to, because they're not humble in the heart enough to let go of their own beliefs, their own what the world tells them to believe in, what religion tells them to believe in. They're not willing to bring themselves to total humility to really hear the Spirit. But for you, a select few, like the disciples, or those who are now on their spiritual journey and ready to transcend this reality, for you, I share my mysteries. Jesus will come as a voice, the Comforter, the Holy Ghost, as the voice of truth, and share the hidden context, the meanings of the scriptures below the surface, in the deepness of the waters, and bring out of the darkness the light, the understanding of the scriptures and their true meanings of conscious awareness. So until the next video, thank you if you've reached the end of this video. It's always important to watch the whole video because there's so much information that I have to share, and to get the whole picture, you really have to just listen to the whole video. So thank you for listening, and I send you my love and my peace.